All right. Rachelle Garniez, is that pronounced properly?
Garnier, like the shampoo,
Gar-
but with a Z.
Rachelle Garnier, songwriter, singer, composer, producer, multi-instrumentalist, career that goes back to, I think, albums that go back to the earlier mid 90s and a New York home.
Yes.
That's where you're at.
Yeah. I am actually, I'm like little bit upstate into the countryside at the moment, um, up in Kingston, but NYC is home and I'm a townie, New York City townie.
Nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
You play banjo, piano, accordion, and one of the things that I really liked about your social media tag, like your bio, was write it, play it, sing it. You know, and I talk about authenticity a lot, and for me, that's the true art. You know, you feel it, and you just put it out there, and end of story. Is that how you are when it comes to your art?
Yes, I'm a simpleton. Um, you know, yes, I like to just distill everything down whenever possible. Um, and I write a lot. I also have been doing songs by other people lately.
Mhm.
But that still entails like an embodiment, you know. It's like I don't want to sing a song if I'm not going to pretend that I wrote it or wish that I wrote it,
Yeah.
you know.
So you've had this amazing arc in your career so far that I want to kind of unpack just a little bit before we get into the values. And you picked two, which we'll talk about today. But there are not a lot of people that can say in the same sentence like boho and classically trained or pianist, but and traveling Europe, but then doing like a cover of Ozzy at a show that you put on, doing like a cover of Iron Man to honor Ozzy, and then also recording with Jack White. Like, there's this really cool diversity and dichotomy to your career so far.
Yes, I just have to make one little correction is that I'm personally not classically trained. But I grew up in a home where my mother, who's still rocking the classical piano at 88 years old, 88 keys, 88 years. But I grew up listening up to a lot of classical music. But like the song said, my life was saved by rock and roll when I heard the radio in the 70s when I was just a wee little girl. That's where I knew I wanted to sort of put the energy toward that kind of energy. Not necessarily rock, but I just want to make sure nobody thinks I'm classically trained. I was like really on purpose not. But yeah, that's I've had like lots of interesting experiences. That's true.
Yeah,
You
and
know.
I stand corrected. The notes say like classical pianist and European professor of French existentialist literature. It was your upbringing,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
very different.
Yeah. Yeah. My dad was raised mostly in Belgium and he was the first person in his family to get a education beyond, junior high school and he
Mhm.
also was undercover um spying on Nazis and things. So that was my dad. And then later he kind of went to Paris and ended up hanging out with like Jean Paul Sartre or something like this. So, um, in a lot of ways, like there's these twists and turns to life where I feel like when you just talked about keeping things very simple, there's that like write it, play
Mhm.
it, sing it, do it. You don't know who your path will intersect with, because I kind of love to be a musician and this, but I don't always want to define myself too hard, which is
Mhm.
difficult for marketing purposes.
Yeah.
Anyways, but I just grabbed a lot of this from my father of that like spirit of you do not know where your life is going to take you based on history, based on luck. He was lucky to have like a resistance kingpin as his teacher in high school. So survival, all these different things, opportunities. We just don't can't
Mhm.
predict them. But,
Yeah.
it's just yeah, just being open, I think, in, like, opening your self travel, if that makes sense.
Oh,
Yeah.
definitely. So,
Mhm.
quickly, how you grew up with all of this classical influence, the piano
Mhm.
and, the literature and whatnot, and then you said rock and
Mhm.
roll saved your life, but then you ended up
Mhm.
having this very prolific career in and around jazz. So how did rock and roll save your life, but then you became a jazz musician?
I will also I'm just gonna say I don't consider myself a jazz musician, and I've had actual, like, almost handcuffs placed on my wrist by the jazz police. I've, managed not to serve time in jazz prison, but, I've been accused of, being a non-jazz musician, and that's fine with me. But I do think that jazz is like I mean, I grew up also like my mom had we had like Duke Ellington records. We lived on Duke Ellington Boulevard. Um, but just again, like I knew I didn't want to be a classical musician, but I never put any particular I feel like the energy of rock and roll when it came out is there's that energy around jazz too, and that they're so tied together with sort of a
Mhm,
like how can I say? Well, certainly Duke Ellington's more orchestrated and has that. So, yeah, I think that I just knew I didn't wanna sit down and, as the kids say, get granular. I like the broad strokes and sort of a more emotional, plunging approach. And now, like, there's so much, a friend of mine calls these things the jazz institutes of technology. So I feel almost like jazz per se has gotten really codified, I guess, for lack of a better word. And
mhm.
again, like I'm no good in school. So I like rock and
Yeah.
roll, the language of the dropouts. I think
It
is
what
what
you
it's
know what?
about.
There's a funny parallel there, right? Because rock and roll and jazz both have this huge life in the abstract, where there might be a rule to it, but there's also a chaos to it. There's
Yeah,
this free flow, which sounds like, as a human, that's how you like to live. And ironically, like, of the two of our values that you picked, the first one was versatility, which for us is
yes,
adaptability. It's we find strength to adapt and evolve in the ever-changing landscape of media culture, for us, life. So why
yes.
is versatility so important to you?
It's important to me because I feel like definition is this constant thing that's just being just shoved at us. And it's so important to know your roots and your culture and what you feel. And that's real. It's not necessarily, um, definition is not per se such a bad thing at all. But as far as like being a musician and being creative and even stepping outside of the musician box, because I feel like I'm a performer and a theater person and a writer,
Mhm,
and there's not that versatility to me means just sort of feeling things from different disciplines and areas. Part of why I really gravitated to the accordion, which was picked up as a joke, um, which
mhm,
I say backfired pretty hard on me. So I ended up playing it. But that instrument has made its way around the world. It was created to be used on ships. So they didn't have to pay for an orchestra or big piano. So one thing I just fell in love with that instrument is you can go almost all over the world carrying a little accordion and you'll meet someone who says, "Oh, we have this traditional music. It's this, it's that." And unexpected places. So to me, yeah, versatility is about connection and sort of not wanting to be defined. I think that has something to do with it in my head, the way I see it. Or you know what? I like, yeah, let me jump in. Let me jump in here. You know, sometimes my
Mhm.
mother's played chamber music and she'll be like, bring your accordion and come in and improvise to, you know, this piece. And that's how I learned to play by ear. I don't read music. I don't really care uh, about defining things too much. I'd love to just be able to stomp and stumble into a scene. Some people are purists and they get really irritated, like jazz police, salsa police. You know, there's always going to be like,
Mhm.
you know, specifics that I can certainly be accused of not maybe going down to the minute. You know, I can go there, but I really like to mush things up. And to my thinking, that's the beauty in a way of our world, if we can take that, that there's cultures coming in and hopefully we're getting a little more um, tumbled in the tumblers. you know, um,
Absolutely. I think
you
that
know.
in life when things are less defined, we come up with some of the most incredible things in the world. I don't know why, but I
Mhm,
just started to think of New Orleans. I've never been, but I'm fascinated by the place, and I'm a big fan of
mhm,
Anthony Bourdain and of the times that he was down
mhm,
there. Is just this melting pot of different cultures, of different spices, of different foods, of different musics, and then you got
mhm.
the definition, which is New Orleans, but that only happened because of all these abstracts being thrown together in a pot.
Absolutely. Yeah. One of my favorite, I mean, my grandfather's from there and my great grandfather was from there. That's about the most sort of I can trace back to the new world, you know, except for Cuba.
Hmm.
But yeah. And this area as well, like the Caribbean, which I feel like New Orleans is a Caribbean nation, you know, where you've got so many
Yeah,
cultures, and it's one of my very favorite places ever. But exactly right. So you're feeling that the New Orleans thing.
yeah.
Yeah. Hmm.
Well, it sounds like the versatility also came from your upbringing with your parents and how they were individually, but then there was also this idea of you being exposed to different influences.
Hmm.
Free schooling came up, Austrian expressionism, even roller disco. So there's a lot of different influences that kind of turned on different parts of you, and that resulted in this current definition of what Rochelle is or who Rochelle is.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's also a thing that, you know, in terms of like I said, like I spent a fair amount of time playing music on the street, you know, in subway, and I really enjoyed that quite a lot because, you know, ultimately it was a really good teaching, like learning, earning as I learned kind of feeling
Mhm.
because I didn't really know how to play. Um, and again, there, the audience is not defined, like, you're not playing in a club people go to hear this kind of music, or they've you know, there's no expectation, they don't expect to see you even. So, in that way,
Yeah.
that I felt like that was a lot of versatility as well, though, to, like, learn how to be like, "Boom, I'm there," you know? And every single time if I woke up and said, "Oh, I'm so broke, I need the money, I have to go out, I gotta play, I gotta make some money," it would invariably be, like, the least lucrative day. And then when I went with intention of just jumping into the flow, you know, and feeling
Mhm.
music, this was always like a very special day, you know? So,
Yeah.
it was an interesting way to kind of start career-wise, you know? Yeah.
It's funny because in that story with you on the streets, busking and performing, the second of our 13 values that you picked out was vehemence,
Mhm.
intensity, and passion. And I think ironically, like that's a perfect segue into that because we say that vehemence captures our fiery spirit as a publication, the depth of our passion for stories and what we tell and the content we produce. For you, this sounds like no matter what, you were just so passionate about the music and this deep passion. the fiery spirit of is where your musical career comes from.
Absolutely. You know, I had been sharing a day job with a friend of mine. We split a job as being a receptionist in a perfectly reasonable place. But I was at the time living in Brooklyn, taking the subway to this job that I just really didn't care anything about. And I thought, as the bridge, we're crossing the bridge, I thought I could be plummeting to my death and I'd be on my way to doing something I don't care. I would like to be struck by lightning when I'm outside playing music. So yes, that's the
Yeah.
vehemence there. Um, that's what it is. It's really sounds so simplistic again. I'm a simpleton. It has to do with like, did I croak while I was doing something I really cared about, and
Mhm.
connected to life, I think is what it means. It's too deep, but
I I totally agree, and I
you know.
apologize, I'm not trying to talk over you, we just have that
No, it's
wonderful,
fine.
lag.
Yeah.
So, I think on your website, not including the most recent album, which was, man, where are my notes here? It came out in May, and that was more of like covers or reimaginings of Tin Pan stuff that you've done. So, but with that album, it looked like 14 roughly that you've done across your career. Does that sound accurate?
Oh, I don't know. I feel like that's too
You
many.
lost count?
I mean, yeah, I've played, I think I've made about 7 with songs I've written, and then there's some other
Right.
records that have come out. One of the ones, uh, I've been starting to do these shows at the end of the year. That's already 10 years ago. Um, 2016. David Bowie died, Prince died, Leonard Cohen died, Sharon Jones died, Mose Allison died, 2016, and then the political United States situation got like so bizarre, and so I thought we need
Mhm.
to have a farewell party. So it's a tradition. Every year now, I do a whole show of artists that have died over the years. So that was Ozzy. Um, we did Iron Man. I played banjo, and Dave Hofstra played tuba. So that was like the heavy metal component, the tuba. Um, and we based it on like, Elon Musk's robots. Anyways,
Mm.
so that one record came out of a compilation of artists that have died. Um, but yeah, I don't know. I've made a couple of records too, like of several with the band that I play in. And it's a group called Vicky Cristina Barcelona, and we do Tom Waits
Mhm.
songs. So we've made several albums as well. So I kind of stopped counting. Sorry. Mm.
That's okay. That's a lot. But my point is simply that, like, I think it was 1982. You're about 17 years old. You go over to Europe and start to explore the world and go on this crazy journey. Did you ever think, leveraging versatility and vehemence, that, like, here you are in 2026, not only doing 10 years of these farewell parties, but having a song produced by Jack White and then released via Third Man Records?
Hmm. Yeah. Uh, I don't know. I mean, I went over there. I have family, in Belgium and France and stuff. And I was thinking I was going to go live in Europe. And I met someone in New York who said, "We're making a movie in Amsterdam and we want you to be in it." And I had no intention of being a musician. I was just into writing and wearing like plastic horses in my hair and, you know, 80s. I don't know what I wanted to do. I was just doing this and that. And then the flamenco kinda got its grip on me, and I ended up in Spain, um, hanging out with this flamenco singer who was part of a group of, Roma, and this guy would, like we'd go to these competitions in tiny towns, and the singers would compete, but it was just a cappella. So they stand out on these small little stages and sing flamenco, which is again like that is a form, but within it, it's an improvised form. And it's like very strict, but the expression comes out. So this guy would win all these contests and then spend all the money on drinks for everyone. And I learned how to play guitar pretty badly. And, I had tinkered with that before, but that I think was when music sort of gripped me. And I was in Amsterdam later and thought, I better go back to New York because I saw that movie Wild Style with the graffiti and the hip hop, and that was just happening.
Mm,
And not that I was ever part of that scene per se, but again, the energy. And it's also like reminiscing on being that age where there's a certain amount of burn, like, wow, that vehemence there is that age, So to try, lately being a little bit older than that, I try to tap into that still. I want to be where
yeah.
that energy is. Uh,
So
yeah.
clearly, those values got you from there to here, and I want to
Mhm.
ask you, how do they tie in? Like, how does versatility tie into your music career now? And before you answer that, second part of the question is like, how did this Jack White collab happen? He produced a song of yours, "My House of Peace." It's released on
Mhm.
vinyl via Third Man. Like, how did you employ versatility to make something like that come together for you?
Oh, well, that um meeting was due to the fact I was part of a group called the Citizens Band, and a good dear friend of mine who's an aerialist, beautiful aerial choreographer, I should say. She was part of this group. She said, "Oh, I think you should join this group. You might dig it." And it was a large amount of people and performers. And I ended up being a co-musical director of the band that had like, an 8-piece band and 15 performers. One of the performers was Karen Elson, and she got married to Jack White, and then she asked me to go to Nashville, uh, um, and write some songs with her. So I ended up playing on her album, co-writing and writing a song for her too, and then, Jack's like, "Oh, do you play Hammond organ?" I said, "Nope." And so he just shoved me. He said, "Great, here, get on that." So I ended up playing it on her album. And ended up, going on tour with her and playing Hammond to the best of my ability. But then, like one day, he said, "You got a song? Let's record a song. You got a song?" I said, "I just wrote this song. I finished it like 4 weeks ago. Played it. Great." He made a couple of calls. We went right into his studio. He played drums. He had LJ play bass. I played piano, I guess, and sang. And within like 35 minutes, it was done. So, in that sense, like, I loved that way of working. I'm there. Um, so yeah, it was because of the Citizens Band that I ended up working with Jack White, whose uh energy, was just so inspiring. I was just like, this is great.
Mm,
It's like and we're done. Boom. That's it. Yeah.
that's beautiful. Well, I mean, that's the
Mhm.
versatility, right? It's very much like the flow, which is something that you talked about when we first
Mhm.
started to chat. I don't know if we were recording yet or not, but
Mm.
when you surrender to the flow and when you stay versatile, incredible things can happen. Opportunities seem to arise out of nowhere, and if you're willing to just capture those, then you get to share stories like that. So, how
Mhm.
important is this to your career now? And wrap us up. What do you have next?
Well, next, I'm that's a good question. Honestly, I'm leaning back into writing because so much of the music I've played in the last while has been other person's songs. So I'm leaning into this writing. I don't know if it's going to even take a particularly musical. Everything's going to be, there's always going to be meter and poetry and story. but it's funny, like, I'm sorta leaning into, writing these stories and seeing when the songs come out of them, but putting them, I think that in this day and age, everybody's got a what do you call, Substack? I'm thinking about
Yep.
such thing. So that's my new thing now. I'm gonna attempt to get on that. And then with this new record that came out, Born in Time, I'm also putting gigs together, playing with a bass player and a drummer, and then I'll be playing piano and guitar and accordion and playing around with that. I'm heading to Europe in a week with the VKB band, so we're going there. But yeah, this remaining the remaining months of this year are going to be really about going back to, it sounds lackadaisical in a way, but flow also is, how do you say, 99% perspiration. So it's about going back to the habit, and like busking, it's like you gotta go out. I would put it on me, 3 hours a day, I'm out playing, minimum.
Mm,
So I'm gonna be my own enforcer. Um, what did, Gandhi say? "It takes a lot of money to keep me this poor," it's all this, like, paradoxes, so, I'm gonna go back to the disciplined free fall. That's my
I love
plan.
that. I mean, it's a perfect encapsulation of what we talked about, and obviously also who you are. That you're following your passion, your fire, and right now it's screaming right. So you're gonna write and see where that goes, and that is that versatility and vehemence combination of like, how do I feel, and how what am I kind of being told to do, or what do I think I should do? Let's follow that and see where it goes, and boom, opportunity rises.
Mhm. Yeah. Yes, indeed. Oh my. Or not,
Rochelle,
but
thanks so much for your time.
yeah, thank you. I really enjoyed, speaking with you, and I love the, values idea. It's really nice. Really, really appreciate that.